first and foremost say thank you very much for inviting me. I don't know what I possess that required me to be here, but anyways, thank you very much for wanting to hear my voice and my thoughts around predominance and predominantly as we head into elections next year. Now, I think there are three underlying pillars that we need to look at in terms of determining what could possibly happen come 2024, both in Namibia, Botswana, and South Africa, but Botswana slightly not. One is that the control of the electoral systems. I think in your introduction, you outrightly put it to say that when somebody is in charge of a political system and wanting to have the independence of that electoral process, ultimately becomes one of the key challenges that we still face. Is elections, of course, some over the years have predominantly wanted to challenge elections on the notion of that we were robbed, but you don't have the actual proof to do that. So one of the biggest problems that we face is that we have political parties or individuals who go to court and say we are challenging an electoral process, but you don't carry and possess the evidence to go and challenge that election. One of the key points is the 2020 ruling of Dr. Itula versus the Electoral Commission of Namibia. You would see that he has gotten over 2/3 of the pleas that he required, but we could not go back to the electoral process simply because there was no challenge on the EVM. So it means that, yes, he has a legal basis to bring an application to court, but does not possess the legal basis for us to go back to re-election because the tool that we used to get the electoral results was never challenged in the court. But of course, it's debatable, it's here, no, there. That is one. Two, we really need to invest, particularly in our country, in civil society advocates and advocacy. The problem that we have is that civil society organizations, one, become political organizations. Two, but also when they are strongly united to awaken people, they become a threat, and therefore people who run those organizations face persecution and many other things. And one of the critical elements in the last one that I want to contribute for now, as we get into statistics in prediction of the future, is that this element of protecting the vote, there is no sense of protecting the vote within our country. You'd see it's the same in South Africa. You cast your vote and you leave. But if you see the current trend in elections, people are actually safeguarding the vote. So you can only safeguard the vote if you understand the value of that vote that you've made. So it goes back to us doing political education, in particular the young people, to say, what is the vote? What power do you possess in having that vote? I gave a comprehensive outlook, and if we need to look into the nitty-gritties of the future, and perhaps it would speak to this question that you're speaking about. Number one, when you speak about authenticity, what is the context in which we're dealing with the authenticism that we are going to discuss? Number one, you would realize that particularly in the African setting, our political parties are either, one, formed against oppression, two, formed against tribal lines, three, formed against interest. So we must now determine which one becomes authentic. So if the authenticity is within our tribal setting, then we are going to form that. And I can give you a number of political parties that are inclined to that. In South Africa, you find the Inkatha party, for example. In Namibia, you are inclined to speak about Nudo because the Ovaherero traditional authority, each household has a saying in the determination of the party. So if somebody does not subscribe to that type of politics and they say, no, I'd rather set a setting where we create a unification of ideas and the likes, or we are forming a political organization on the basis of economic struggle. How do we determine authenticity in that aspect? So it becomes a bit challenging to address that one. But when we look at your second tier of the question in terms of what is really the picture of this dominance, and maybe I've not done my homework properly in terms of Botswana, and I apologize for that. In terms of where we are at home, I want to take you to 3 elections. There has always been a trend in greater voter registrations when there's a change of leadership. So every 10th year, of course for founding president is 15th. So every 10th year, you would see that there's a huge voter registration and a huge voter turnout. Why is that? It is because there's always an aspiration of something. Only in 2019 that it was not a change in leadership, but there was something new, and therefore everybody else went to vote. Now, in 2009 to 2014, the ruling party's candidate, SWAPO, President Geingob, enjoyed a 4.97% increase. That is why every speech from 2014 he gave, he showed his appreciation. So you gave me 87%. So it's an increase. But when we came to 2019, he got a 30.16% decline. And he never boasted again because he was humbled. So the trend is that there is always a peak, but a serious decline. But if you look at SWAPO in 1989 to date, you'll be able to track those decreases. Now, part of the reason is the urban voters' influence that you're talking about now. That they are more young people who migrated from the villages to the cities. They get registered in the city and they can vote in the cities to look for better opportunities. And I'll run this through fast. South Africa, the ANC, from 2009 to 2019 have experienced a drastic decline of about 3.75 in 2009 to 2014. 2019, they've got about 4.65% decline. Now, interestingly, in 2014, the introduction of the EFF, one would have thought that it's part of the decline. The ANC only lost 15 seats in parliament. Why is this significant? Is in the sense that the political system in South Africa and ours are different. They vote for MPs, and MPs vote for the president. So they only lost 15 seats. The DA gained 22 seats. The EFF got 25 seats. So it's a combination of 47 seats newly introduced. So we can't for sure say that the ANC has lost in that aspect. Of course, probably they've lost in terms of new voters. So you see that trend is going down. In the projection of elections, in South Africa, the EFF is the only party that is growing and experiencing growth. It's very correct to say that COPE is a breakaway faction of ANC is declining. Even in SWAPO, RDP, COD is nowhere to be found. APP has just fired their Secretary General. So you would see that those factions, there is no organic growth, but there is decline every election that they contest. When you go to Angola, interestingly, in Zimbabwe, in 2017, the MPLA got 61%. 2023 or 2022, they got a 10% decline. UNITA, interestingly, from 26% to 44%. What is it that UNITA did differently? A younger candidate, a youth, organized youth that supported that candidate. You'd see that there was a new electoral team that ran the elections in Angola. That is why even us who live in Odibo, with our cousins who came here, we told them to go and vote for change in Angola. Because the message has sunk and came to the villages. Now, last ZIP, they got 52%. but declined in the actual number of voters. Percentage-wise, they went up, but the number of voters went down. Now, we rallied behind Triple C thinking things are going to change. But same candidate, different movement, but he has declined to 44%. So, and even in terms of numbers, under the MDC alliance, which was more organized, 2.1 million, now he just got 1.9 million. So it's about 200,000 people that he lost. So what does the future actually look like for Namibia? You can speak about local authorities in urban cities. All of them, if not 90%, are running coalition. Why? Because there is no one who got the absolute majority. So all of us who contested in that election, the electorate just said, not you, not you, not you, not you, but all of you can participate. Try and find one another. So it was some sort of natural, organic process to get people to put political differences aside and try and work together for the benefit of the electorate. But what is it that people have done when they've entered in those spaces? They've insulted the electorate. So what do you expect? Two things can happen. One, SWAPO can regain its majoritarian within those local authorities, because SWAPO has played a significant card that I never thought they would have played. They've simply said, okay, we are staying away, you can play your game. But without them, you are unable to play that game. So it is either, depending on how communities are satisfied, and that is why she's saying we are at the crossroad. So depending what would actually happen, and Irongo region is one of the interesting regions because it's never loyal to anyone. It's like Zambia. Irongo is like Zambia. It's not loyal to anyone. So today, SWAPO can lose in Irongo, but come the next election in 2025, they can actually come back. But who is to be blamed? It is the people that we've placed in leadership. Toe to toe is the fact that since 1990, SWAPO has not done anything with the 40 million that they get from government and over that amount. SWAPO goes and says, if you don't see development, you'll be able to see it, touch it, feel it, and kiss it, and lick it. The favorite lines of Comrade President Ifike Punye Pohamba. Why is that possible? It's because SWAPO has managed, we give them management over our taxpayers' money. So every time you go and buy soap, every time you go and buy pets, that percentage that goes to the state, it's in the management of the SWAPO party. And SWAPO cannot independently boast and say, this is from the 40 million we got from government, this is what we've done with that. There comes the biggest question, what happens to the opposition? We play the blame game. No, we cannot do that because we are not in government. But PDM, since 2020 to 2025, they are going to receive over 80 million Namibian dollars. Now this is because they get 16 per year. So this is interestingly what the PDM members ought to ask the PDM leadership and say, what is the visibility of that money? Why is it that you are unable to put up structures when SWAPO can with that amount of money that they get from the state? Why is it that NEF, CDV, others who get 2 million, 1 million, what is it that they get to show for that? So it becomes a challenging ripple effect for the dominance of existing political parties to, even if they form a coalition, put together, would not beat SWAPO because of that 7% difference. But interestingly, what can happen is the change in the politics, and that is what Paulus is saying, that we must shift and do away, and that is what she's also saying, with the blame game type of politics. Because if you are interested, and this is where it is not necessarily around, and this is why I say the 2024 is an interesting election, because it's a second round of elections where we are going to have more urban voters. So what is the question around urban voters? It's bread and butter issues. It's nothing to deal with loyalty. We have no history. to the liberation movement and the struggle of our country, but it has everything to deal with NASFAF. There's everything to deal with the tenders being given to comrades. There's everything to deal with the young professional who's unable to make it through within their current status quo because of the high cost of living. It has everything to deal and speak to the high youth unemployment. It's embarrassing for us to have 100,000 young people scramming for next to nothing, a 2 weeks type of job. Why? Because there is nothing to put bread on the table. So that is the question that we are going to answer in 2024 and say, the candidate or the political party, rather that speaks to those aspirations, not just theoretically, because remember, there's a lot of politicking and theorizing of concepts, but we are not getting to the work. We need to ensure that we must get to the work. And I want to speak to Paulo saying, why is it that we come out and become independent candidates? It is because the spaces that we find ourselves in, the ideas that we have, and the solutions that we can offer are often rejected. We come out of that breeding ground of the SWAPO Youth League under the capable leadership of Dr. Elia Ngurare. When I was suspended from SWAPO, and remember that when SWAPO suspended and expelled us, that trust and relationship is broken. The process why we went to court is not because we wanted to go back to SWAPO. It's to safeguard the generation that remains in SWAPO, that SWAPO must know that it can be challenged when they expels a person unprocedurally from its own facts and constitution. So we are coming out of a space where this contestation of ideas must be welcome and not be put in a room of comrades who can sing the loudest. I used to sing very well. That is why I was the youngest district secretary. So the people knew when we get there and there were problems, I would sing and we create solutions out of that. But the times have moved where young people are now asking the tough questions. So we put our hands up in the hope and aspiration that we are going to do something different. But of course, we must at all materialistic time never, ever try and say that what SWAPO has done for this country is nothing. We must appreciate and preserve the history of our country. Why is that important? The roots of SWAPO is within the working framework. It's a workers' party. It's a workers' union that transformed into a political party. And through the working class is how things are able to do. That is why they became very clever and took this NUNW and put it in within the party. But it is also about how do we speak to the bread and butter issues for us to who have aspirations to topple SWAPO. And we will do it. If it's not tomorrow, we are going to eventually do it because the statistics are showing that it is possible. We only need 7%, comrades. And we are going to speak a different language. We have phone calls in the middle of the night. So we really need to do that because you find, interestingly, in 2019, when we suspended, and many SWAPO comrades don't know, we tallied the elections for SWAPO. President Genkop didn't know whether he was going to win. Fike Punye Pohamba was in limbo, as well as the founding president. We sat in the Kalahari boardroom and did tallies. And what he's saying is true because nobody, when we just pick up and say, Okangwati, what is the election result? You will get it because there's somebody at the polling station. We now learned that for us to win elections, we must protect the vote. If we are not protecting the vote, we will not win. SWAPO will get 52% and all of us will go home saying, we tried. But we would have brought this thing to a standstill. But because we have no interest in protecting the vote, we are unable to topple the ruling party. I don't want to make enemies. I'm a very good friend of many political personalities in our country. But the truth is that meritocracy does not exist within a political setting. Because that is why you find that even in our current political systems, technocrats and professionals completely stay away from this nasty process. Why? Because in Oshikango constituency, if I go and contest, I am viewed as a guy from Windhoek and can speak English, and therefore I think I know it all. But somebody who has been at the village, maybe can sympathize with the issues, but is unable to properly articulate the budget for the constituency to get the higher development budget because of that advantage that others have because they've gone out. So it doesn't count. It poses as a threat. Unfortunately, it does not matter which political party you look at it or political systems you look at it. Even worse, even when we look at the highest office of the country, in which we are supposed to say, look, it really, but for the first time, we ultimately moved. We rallied 247,000 Namibians to believe in an idea of an independent candidate through Dr. Itula. And we never portrayed him. Of course, he went around with his SWAPO party membership card. That assisted, very good. But beyond and above, it is the idea of the person and the candidate that we are selling. The unfortunate thing is that whenever you have a higher setting and seem to get to grasp a lot of things from people, you will always pose a threat. For example, in 2020, we had Dr. Job Ampanda as a candidate through the affirmative repositioning movement. Everybody rallied together and they said, no. Here, it can't happen. Because when you pose as a threat to others, they would always find unity in that strength. So, meritocracy, are we ready for it? Let's see what 2024 gives us. Reasonable complaints, yes or no?
Yes.
He who feels the heat when you're at the fire, you have every right to complain because of this dollar that you spend out. If we can afford to provide basic services to every Namibian, just basic services, I'm not talking about extreme. Wi-Fi, we are going extreme. Think about where you sit in this country and you only get a mobile clinic once a month. When I was in prison, and I listened to radio a lot then, I heard a story of somebody, when there's no donkeys there, that area in Okwanyama, there's a lot of cows. And the makeshift bed that they've put for a cow, person was sick because the date of the clinic coming is very far. They had to take that risk. And the person died on the way. Now the trauma that you experience in that aspect, and that person complains and say, government is not doing enough. Do they have the right to do so, yes or no? I think the answer is blatant. When you speak about water supply in the country, just basic services, water supply, and is proving to be a challenge. But of late, government has done some extreme works. This is one of the challenges that I have with government is that their way of communicating what government has done is communicated at a political campaign. So it becomes difficult for a voter because there are people who simply just are Namibians, don't participate in elections, don't belong to a political party, but also equally need to get those services. So they can't differentiate what government has done from what SWAPO prides to do that they've done. So yes, when it comes to basic services, we have every right to complain. And we must find a modality to deal with that one. Coalition systems. It's a competing interest. And for as long as that we have selfish people who we put in political offices, it will be proving to be a very difficult, daunting task to get services delivered. We're speaking about the city of Windhoek, and I want you as students to go and do research. Since 2020 to date, their budget is going to be approved now by the minister. You must look at that budget line between 2015 to 2019. And you look at 2020 to 2023. The budget lines, the items that are in the budget are the same. So if they are the same, it means that there is no change. Yes, we have different people, but is there a difference in thinking in terms of service delivery? So we can be speaking about, let's get change, we get young people. SWAPO is doing a great job in terms of organic change, which is driven by the people. That is why you see there are now young people who are allowed to come to platforms and speak. Young people taking over in their rank and files. It's because of that pressure that you're exerting from. You're saying you are gone. So when they see young people are gone, let's put young people so that they can get young people back. So that organic must also be applauded. But the problem becomes that if you are changing what we think is not working with the young and is still not working, then we are doing a disservice to ourselves. So that is why we need to go deeper in terms of meritocracy, and that is how we can solve that coalition problem. I think the political system that we've adopted as a country, unfortunately, is the one that allowed for many of these things to happen. Because we can't necessarily move away to adoption in terms of separating the separation of power type of thing, which you want to address. For example, why is it that the minister sits in parliament when he must be accountable to parliament? But in our foundation of democracy, we say, for you to be elected as a minister, you need to be part of the August House, which is parliament. So it makes it very difficult to distinct, and I think I speak for my constituency to be the first. And after that, we had a problem. The men moved to another political party. Our first councillor in Tobias Anyeko, when he comes and addresses the community, and he used to work by foot, he says, today I'm here on the SWAPO ticket. And everybody who never belonged to SWAPO at the time, and who did not feel that they want to discuss SWAPO matters, they left. Then he comes back and says, today I'm on a government ticket because I'm here to speak about how we are going to get water connection, how we are going to get electricity, and many other things. So it is also about the type of leaders that we've put into offices. What is their passion? Yes, they need to make sure that they put on their political regalia so that within the rank and files where the political system, where they contest themselves, are getting there. And I'm just reminded of this thing, of time. So it is really just, I hope I've answered that one. And lastly, we need to develop a culture of maintenance. Speaking to the infrastructure, Katutura, VTCs, UNAM, for example, and many other functional government institutions that we have. The reason why they are on the downhill is because we've never, ever, and let's look at the budget. We are students. Let's unpack the budget and pick a budget item that speaks to maintenance. We are spending 8 billion in our capital budget to build new things. But government is not deliberately taking out even just 3 billion. Do you know what 3 billion in maintenance is going to do? It's going to make sure that everybody who is going to VTC, all of you who are business-minded, all of you who are accountants, have some sort of share in this 3 billion. Because it's pumped directly into us. So it doesn't mean that we must now order medicine from India and we get them for $30 and price 1,300. But it means that a person now goes and buys a screwdriver, gets a nail, and just maintains a table. Buy paint and brush. So it's putting direct bread on the local economy. So it means that if your grandfather owns a small hardware, they get a piece of that, and they go to Pupkewitz to go and procure from Pupkewitz, or somebody goes to China, get the material, but still be able to employ in the local economy. We were speaking towards political parties who are represented in parliament. Those are the ones that receive the funds to run the administration. But what we are extending to that is to say there is really nothing that they do for the voting community that they represent. I think she addressed the first question around that one-party system. The second one, I think the vote ultimately, in the understanding of the power within the vote, is key for all of us to understand and be able to comprehend and be able to ultimately take responsibility for. Does the state carry a responsibility for each and every Namibian? Absolutely. Without a shadow of a doubt, even a child who does not vote, the government and the state carry a responsibility to ensure that this child is fed, this child has proper shelter, this child has access to education, and these are what we swore to, that oath that the person takes. It's not to say that when I take oath and I'm given 2 billion to administer under the Ministry of Agriculture or 14 billion under the Ministry of Education, we are only going to give those that have voted for us. That is why our right to claim for anything is in 3 documents. 1, a birth certificate. 2, an ID. 3, a passport. The rest, permanent residence, when you are married to somebody, or we want you for a specific skill. So therefore, naturally, we've always defined elections and I'm going to finish now, in the following manner. Each Namibian over the age of 18 who is eligible to vote represents a 1%. So the choice is now yours. In every 5 years, what do you want to do with that 1%? Yes, it may be unfair for somebody who has not queued up and for somebody who has not been able to cast a vote to come back and say, but why is it that we are not getting service delivery? When they had an opportunity to contribute. For example, people in Windhoek West, 4 students, in fact 5 students, could have, my good friend Emma could have not been a councillor because of just 5 people. So that is how tense an electoral process should be in order for us to avoid that polarized system of just, we all know that when we go to Uvodhia, there are no elections there. When we go to Okaku, yeah, maybe, but when you go to the other one of Okachali, there are no elections because the people in themselves are happy with their candidate. And we are not saying this notion of change. You must also understand us correctly. Where things are working, let us keep them because they are working. Where things are not working, let us remove them so we can put things that are working. So the education on voters' rights, and that is why that you'll always find a new candidate, perhaps some of the opposition parties who take the liberty to join the ECN in ensuring that there is a voters' education. But here is the crisis that you find and why we get discouraged to go and vote. 1, do research. Nami breweries, and I learned this shockingly, Nami breweries, before every election, there's a special on Tafelaga. Just Saka is lost. What do you think we are going to do? Between somebody who think is going to remain the system the way it is and my entertainment, definitely we are going to do that. And the second aspect of that is the design of the electoral day. By design, if you are between the age of 18 and 49, in 59, you can queue 4 hours to wait for casting 1 vote. But my mother, who is 60, goes in and vote. Now, the numbers show that, of course, that generation is not a lot. It's about 47,000 of them. But just imagine every 1 hour, 1 votes, 4 of you leave. So the design of that election day needs to be confronted with the ECN. We have no problem in having 1 line for old people, 1 line for us, just that each one gets their own ballot. So we go into, there are about 4 stations where we can vote. It's easier and convenient for people to do that. Why is it in other countries people are able to do it better and we can't? And we're just a small democracy. So in finalizing that aspect around voter apathy, it's a designed system. It is designed so that we don't get to the polls. He who provides, who is responsible for the ECN budget, count the ECN budget without an election year, and when there's an election year, it hell of a sudden goes up. But what is the mandate of the ECN? It's to do voters education and registration. There is no way in the act of the ECN that says you can only call for registration when there's elections. Your duty when you wake up, if I turn 18 today, these are the things that we are supposed to be demanding. We went to court and we failed miserably because we couldn't articulate law properly then. We failed because we said the mandate from the act says that it's registration and conducting of elections. So when I turn 18, when there is no election year, I must be able to get a voter's card. So the question is, how do we make a voter's card fashionable like a driver's license? Maybe we must require a voter's registration for employment. Because the only reason why you go and get a driver's license is because you have an upper hand to go and get employment, because there will be a car available and chances are that you may drive. So what are the benefits of a voter's card? Even if it's to say that I'm going to put Dimbulukeni into power, I know he comes from the SWAPO party, therefore they are comrades with Shitigona and they are going to make sure that things are done the other way around. So it's not an exciting thing that we make in this process. So it is by design, and to make sure that those that understand the fear of you must go. That is why you always find that those people who have not voted in the last election can topple this government hands down. Because even SWAPO, when they won the seats in parliament, the votes were not more than people who did not show up to vote. Even President Geinkop did not get more votes than people who did not show up. Unfortunately, we are not in the United States where we have protest votes and are considered. So for us, if you show up, we count you, that is it. Just wanted to correct just 3 facts. One, on a cabinet decision that nothing can go out wrong. It's false, because even today, lithium went out. HUSAP took out our you see there, we became the second biggest producer of uranium, and it's sitting in China for stockpile, and we are powering that economy. So it's that fact let's quickly just do fact check. Ochomwise extension 4 and 5. Inno Investment was the developer of that land. Each young person bought a form which was initially $60. City of Windhoek made it $100. They made 4,000 forms were printed. They made 400,000. So I wonder how that land was given free. So fact check. Yes, we agree with you, Noshakati. I've seen that one. In terms of the district hospital, 15 years under the leadership of Mr. 10%, Endron Dishishi, there was a budget item for 15 years to build a district hospital in Windhoek. The current vice president of SWAPO was seen, you see where there is the 3-way stop of Havana, Greenwell, and Havana, Hakana on this side, Vanaenda on this side, where that thing is built and it is not yet there. My good friend was there. She went to announce that it's a hospital that is being built, the district hospital, because there was a budget line for 15 years. But there is a board, as you are coming from that Monte Cristo Road now, NES Peter Nanyemba Avenue Street, that is written Amta Food something something. So there is that confusion. So yes, we hear that there is a tender that is out to build a district hospital, but the fact is that for 15 years, money was being allocated to that district hospital. So I just wanted us to be clear on those ones. In America, there are not 2 parties. There's people from the Green Party. It's about 400 political parties that are in America. But there are only 2 that are dominant. So we can have 20 political parties in Namibia, but if the race, unfortunately, is going to become between SWAPO and the IPC, you can't say that others don't exist. But it is that people believe that when we go to parliament, we feel that IPC can take SWAPO toe to toe, you know, because of what they present and all those things. So it is also just perception and not fact.